much. Is this the clicker here? Okay. How's everyone doing? Good. Full? Okay, not too full. I don't want anybody nodding off while I give my talk. This weather is just beautiful. It is. I wish I could pack it in my suitcase and take it back to me in Atlanta. We're in our 70s, today, but this is just. It is just gorgeous. That's all I could really say. But I also want to thank the conveners of this event for giving me really the honor and pleasure of having an opportunity to spend some time with you. Sustainability conferences are critical and important. My hope is to always create an opportunity and encourage people who participate in conversations like this to broaden their understanding of the sustainability conversations and the opportunities as well as the challenges embedded in this conversation. The Partnership for Southern Equity is an organization that is committed to realizing equity in communities by bringing together various interests, whether it be philanthropy or the nonprofit community, academia, grassroots organizations, the private sector. Our tagline is "Together we prosper." That is the only way, as a community, we will have a chance to move forward. We focus on various issues, and I am going to talk a little bit about some of the activities and efforts that we're engaged in, and again, hopefully bring a renewed understanding of sustainability, and even more important, that sustainability consists of more than one E. That on many occasions when you hear the word sustainability, we talk a lot about environmental sustainability, which is a critical component of the sustainability conversation. But there are actually two additional E's: economy, and the one I will talk about today, which is equity. Without those three pillars engaged in the sustainability conversation or discourse, you're not really doing sustainability, whether you want to embrace that or not. And hopefully, again, through our conversation, I will be able to encourage you to think a little bit differently. So, of course, it's always good to start with the future. I'm always encouraged when I look in the eyes of young people, because not only are their lives not as developed yet, of course, because they're young people, but if you look in their eyes, you will see so much hope and so much potential to be whatever they want to be. And we try as much as we can as individuals, where we're connected to young people that we love, to encourage them and always instill in him a belief that all things are possible. And on many occasions, we have a chance to help to facilitate that in some way or another. But also, unfortunately, when we get older sometimes, we forget that we used to have that same hope in our eyes. I had a lot of hope in my eyes when I was a young person. When I was that age, I thought I could actually be a superhero. And I guess in many ways, I'm still trying to be that superhero. But in each and everybody's eyes, everyone's eyes in this room, you were a young person. And you had hope in your eyes. And someone played a part in ensuring that you would have a chance to one day sit in this room and have a conversation about sustainability, or ways that we can all work together to create a more resilient and inclusive community. Unfortunately, though, in communities around the South in particular, which is the place where the Partnership for Southern Equity focuses on a lot of our work, that the dreams of young people have become a dream deferred, that the goals and aspirations in a young person's hearts and eyes that we see are not as strong as the barriers that they face every day. We can now look at a zip code and have a pretty much of an idea about the opportunities that young people have to be successful. And we have those challenges not only in Atlanta and other places around the South, but also here in Sarasota, where 15% of the county is under 18, but yet 1 in 5 of those kids live in poverty. Almost 50% of the young people that attend public schools on free and reduced lunch. That is a high number. Usually, free and reduced lunch is utilized as an indicator for poverty. And while only 6% of the kids live in concentrated poverty, we still have challenges around race because 48% of those kids are African American. And 11% of the kids in Sarasota have no health insurance. So again, we have young people who are in Sarasota that have the same dreams that you had when you were a kid. What are we doing to ensure that all young people, regardless of where they live or what they look like or who their parents were, have a chance to reach their full potential? If we don't focus on answering that question, then we will not be a sustainable community. I will say it again. If we're not focused on ensuring that all people, whether they live in your communities or not, or go to your churches or not, or part of your clubs or not, have a chance to roll up their sleeves and benefit and participate in what Sarasota can become or what you would like to hold on to as a community, real sustainability will not be realized. And so again, this is not a wag you finger moment for Sarasota. This is a real life come to the creator moment for all of us, and in particular in the American South. In my city, Atlanta, a poor child only has a 20% chance to rise out of poverty, which is the worst of any city in the country. But if you look at this map that was done by Raj Chetty out of Harvard University around the geography of opportunity, you see a lot of red in the South. The South is not a good place right now for opportunity and inclusion for vulnerable communities. And we all have the responsibility to change that. No community is an island unto itself. If we're really, again, committed to true sustainability, we're going to have to answer and solve these challenges of economic mobility and opportunity for young people and others. So when I talk about a more equitable region, I'm talking about a region where all people, regardless of their backgrounds or race and other superlatives, are fully able to participate in the region's economic vitality, contribute to the region's readiness for the future, and connect to the region's assets and resources, all people, that no one will be left behind. Because at the end of the day, by us providing opportunities for all people to engage, we benefit from that, whether we realize it or not, and we position ourselves again to be more sustainable. When I talk about equity, I'm not talking about equality. A lot of times people use the term equity and equality synonymously, and they're not the same. I wear a size 11 shoe. I'm sure there's someone in this audience that does not wear a size 11 shoe. Let's say a size 5. Equality would be giving everyone in this room a size 5 shoe. You have a shoe, so you should be happy, right? Well, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. With my size 11, I'm not gonna be happy with a size 5 shoe. So how can we work together to ensure that all people have the size shoe they need in order to move towards a better tomorrow. That is the difference between equity and equality, and my hope is that you will embrace a path towards equity, one step at a time. And so we have to work together to sustain the future. We have to begin to not, again, focus on our own individual silos, but again, to connect the dots and understand how growth, environment, and economy will play a key role in who wins and who loses in the 21st century. That we have to begin to understand that we are connected, that there's a shared destiny that we have as a community, and that we must begin to realize that and embrace that. And it's not going to be an easy thing to do, because there are things that many of us would like to forget, and even at most not even like to talk about. But one of the biggest differences that I always tell people when I speak about equity and sustainability is that the biggest difference between equity and equality is history. That we have to be willing to embrace the mistakes that we've made in the past, to not necessarily focus on that or to blame certain communities, but to understand that in the race towards prosperity, everyone did not start at the same time or in the same block or have the same challenges. I wanted to bring to you actual policy that was actually in the FHA, the Federal Housing Administration underwriting manual, which said that if a neighborhood is retained stability, it is necessary that property shall continue to be occupied by the same social and racial classes. A change in social or racial occupancy generally contributes to instability and a decline in values. That was a federal policy, the policy of segregation, an assumption that if we live together as a community, that we are not as valuable, that we're more valuable apart than we are together. Now, it would be enough if it just stopped there. But the banks began to use that ideology when they made a decision about who to provide loans to for housing loans and business loans and what communities to invest in. That would be even worse, but it didn't stop there. The realtors began to take families and use that intelligence to begin to steer families away from certain communities and in other communities. And so again, the history of segregation, the history of economic policy, the history of environmental policy has inherently been inequitable. And we have to find a way to collectively not only acknowledge that, but also work together to undo it. This is a map of redlining in the city of Atlanta in the early 20th century. I'll give you, just to help you out here, you see in the key, best communities are in blue, still desirable are a darker blue, declining is yellow, and red is hazardous. So the communities that are red were red-lined, so to speak, and banks would not invest or loan dollars in those red-line communities. I give you, well, I don't have a lot of money today, $1. If you could tell me who lived in those communities, in the hazardous communities. Black folks, just to make it clear. So again, we have to acknowledge the unfortunate decisions that we made in the past, and even more important, how those decisions minimize our ability to move forward together collectively in the future. Another map, another chart here of wealth, and again, how the decisions of banks and other financial institutions to not invest in communities of color actually influence the wealth generating opportunities of people who lived in those communities. In 1984, whites had a little over $90,000 in net worth, while African Americans had a little over $5,000 in net worth. By 2009, that average net worth was $265,000 for the white community and $28,000 for the African American community. So again, policy, decision making, it matters. Investments matter. Folks, unfortunately, did not have a chance to start at the same block, on the same place in the race. We also have challenges around race as it relates to our pollution challenges, that we've learned through research that race is the characteristic that has the most direct correlation to pollution. We know that census blocks that have a majority African American or people of color contain two times the amount of pollution than a community that has less than 25% of its population people of color. We know that the prolonged exposure to those toxins create all types of challenges, whether it be heart disease or birth defects, asthma, lung disease, and learning difficulties. And we even know that it affects markets. The median household value for low pollution blocks are almost $15,000 more than high pollution blocks. And that the median family incomes in these blocks are actually close to $2,000 more. You've heard a little bit from someone who spoke earlier about the cost, the energy burden that individuals pay for energy. In 2012, the average household making more than $50,000 spent 9% of their income on energy bills, whereas folks making 50% or less spent 21% of their income on utilities. And for folks making $10,000 to $30,000, they spent 24% of their income on energy. Our energy system is not created equal. And we have to embrace and understand that. And again, find those places where inequity is and begin to work together to transform those communities and those spaces if we want true sustainability to realize itself. I'm honored to be a native of Atlanta, and one of Atlanta's greatest sons, of course, is Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And he had a mantra or a saying that he would utilize called the network of mutuality. He said that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. What does that mean? What happens on the south side affects what happens on the north side. What happens on the east side affects what happens on the west side. One of the greatest challenges that we have in the city of Atlanta is traffic. If you've ever been to Atlanta, you've experienced it. But the unfortunate part about that is that our traffic problems didn't happen on its own. In 1973, all counties in metropolitan Atlanta had a chance to become a part of our regional transportation system. They had a chance to buy into the transportation system. At the end of that vote, though, only 2 counties in a city decided to become a part of our transportation system: Fulton County, DeKalb County, and the city of Atlanta. The suburban counties did not choose to become a part of our transit system because of the color of our buses. It was because suburban counties were concerned that communities of color would use public transit and move into those communities. But again, now, we all sit in traffic because we don't have a comprehensive transportation system. And I don't know about you, but I've never seen white traffic or black traffic or Latino or Asian HOV lane. We all have to suffer because of the decisions that were made in the past, and now we're trying to play catch up to try to fix it. And so we had an opportunity as an organization to expand our transportation system for the first time in 45 years into a county called Clayton County. 45 years it took us to expand our transit system. And now we're finally have generated the momentum to move forward. But again, we're all connected. The decisions that were made by those suburban counties have now affected all of our communities because of those decisions, we did not have a comprehensive transit system, and we still don't have one to this day. So I'm gonna move fairly quickly because I wanna talk a little bit about some of our activities and some of the ways we have tried to stand at where the 3 E's of sustainability meet. And hopefully this will give you a perspective on how you may be able to move forward as a community. The first thing that we have to acknowledge is that unbalanced growth equals inequitable opportunity. That the history of inequitable investments and exclusionary policies have hurt us all. I provided an example of that through the MARTA analogy of how, because of concerns of suburban communities, we all have to sit in traffic. There are stories here as well, I'm sure, that you can find that will speak to that challenge as well. As an organization, we've had an opportunity to work with our Metropolitan Planning Organization to begin the process of thinking through ways that the MPO can invest dollars to actually minimize unbalanced growth in metropolitan Atlanta. We're in a formal partnership with them. We have worked with them to develop something called the Equitable Target Areas Index, which is utilized to map spatial inequity and to also support the various departments in their investment decisions. We've also worked with our MPO to have regional forums around issues of equity. We've taken local leaders on regional equity tours. We also supported their transportation division around developing performance measures for transportation equity. We're currently now working with our MPO on developing something called the Equity Playbook. Will basically be a strategic plan that will be leveraged by all of the divisions in our MPO to begin the process of moving a more balanced growth agenda forward. The other thing that I hope that you will also acknowledge is that extreme extraction has helped to facilitate extreme inequity, in particular in places around the country, but also in the American South. That again, the South's history of racial supremacy and exploitation is embedded in our energy systems. Looking at human beings as a commodity and not a human being. To support the growth of business, which again, over and over again needs an increase in energy production, connects an unholy alliance for inequity in community. And we have to be willing to acknowledge that fact and not run from it. The South has an unfortunate history, but that doesn't mean that we need to stay there. So we have, as an organization, began to push for what we call energy equity, which is the fair distribution of benefits and burdens from energy production and consumption. We have organized a group in the state of Georgia called the Just Energy Circle that is working together to advocate for energy equity. We focus on engaging communities around the issue, advocating for stronger consumer protections, and connecting Georgia's renewable energy, economic development, and advocacy community around this new push for energy equity. We have various organizations representing traditional environmental groups, grassroots organizations, and other groups, consumer rights agencies that have all come together to move this agenda forward, and we have made very, very good progress in engaging the community and educating low-wealth communities and communities of color around energy systems. We have a bi-yearly forum called the Just Energy Summit, where we bring together people around the country to talk about energy issues. We're engaging now our Public Service Commission around a nuclear plant that's being developed, and we've intervened in that case in Plant Vogtle to work to ensure that dollars are set aside for low-wealth communities and communities of color around energy efficiency and workforce development training. And so we, again, are beginning to weave this ecosystem of action around the issue of energy equity to ensure that justice is at the center of the energy conversation. We also have to hopefully acknowledge that renewable cities could equal urban renewal. I know that we focus a great deal on working to ensure that cities are renewable and energy efficient. But if we're not also sensitive to the facts that that push towards a more renewable city could actually create gentrification and create a less affordable city, then we're missing the point as well if we're really talking about creating a sustainable community. People could be uprooted and displaced by an equitable energy transition. So we have to, again, put equity at the center of the conversation. This is some work that we're doing now in the city of Atlanta. We had a chance to pass 100% renewable resolution recently, and now we're working with various foundations and other partners, city of Atlanta, to begin to ensure that jobs policies and other policies that will realize equitable transition or just transition will be realized through our leadership and our engagement. We also had a chance to work in North Birmingham to develop a community planning strategy in one of the most polluted communities in Birmingham, Alabama, and now they're working to, again, develop a comprehensive plan that will not only be balanced, but also be equitable. We're also doing a lot of work around green infrastructure, because again, we know that if we don't initiate equitable policies within the green infrastructure conversation, how we manage water through natural systems, that those natural systems will make communities more attractive and could potentially create challenges around gentrification and displacement. And so we're working with various partners to not only push for policies that will create more equitable green infrastructure, but also jobs, and help to facilitate a stronger civic ecosystem, where vulnerable populations that are usually marginalized will have a chance to be engaged in policy making. We worked with these various organizations around a group that we've organized called the Just Growth Circle, again, traditional environmental groups as well as EJ organizations and community-based groups to begin the process through what we call values-based organizing. We know that policy, in essence, is a reflection of the values of people in power. And so for us, it's about how do we find ways to create a new value system that will realize the type of policies that will be more equitable. And these are the shared values that the organizations that we're engaged in work together to develop. And our city passed the Green Infrastructure Strategic Plan. They actually incorporated those values into their plan, and we also will be working with them to begin to move an equity agenda as it pertains to their Green Infrastructure Strategic Plan. Quickly, Georgia Tech Living Building, a $30 million investment from a foundation to create the most environmentally sound building, educational building in the Southeast. Tech did not stop there. They actually they are initiating as well a local hiring policy to ensure that vulnerable populations will be trained, and that they will also have curriculum within the school and the living building that will teach students about equity and opportunities for equity through the sustainability lens. So in essence, we need a new covenant for shared prosperity that will not only stop with our governmental agencies, but we need the public sector, we need the private sector, philanthropy, as well as the nonprofit community to begin, again, to weave this tapestry for change that can work together collectively to realize a more sustainable and inclusive community for everyone. So I started with a picture of me, and I'm going to end with a better picture of my daughter. Every time I travel, I miss her like a lot. But the amazing thing is that in many ways, she encourages me to keep moving. She encourages me to keep pushing because I want her to be in a position to realize every dream that she has in her heart. But that's not enough for me. And I hope it's not enough for you. Because that's the easy type of love, to love your immediate loved ones. The transformational love that I'm talking to you about today is when you're able to love somebody else's child just as much as you love your own. That you want just as much for somebody else's child that may live in a community that you're not that familiar with. that you want just as much for them as you want for the young people and other people that you care about and love. And that is why this work is so critical, because it's that type of transformational love that will change our communities. And so I wanted to end with another quote by Dr. King, because I think he really understood that there is power in this conversation about love. He says that power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. How are we leveraging that power to make better communities for all of us? It's possible. We can do it if we decide to turn away from the past that has left so many of us behind, to a tomorrow where everyone will have an opportunity to reach their full potential in what Dr. King called the beloved community. Thank you so much.